I've got to admit it. I am not tempted by the things Jesus was tempted by in the desert. I have never once wanted to change a rock into bread, perhaps because I lack that skill. I am well aware that running kingdoms or even democracies is incredibly difficult work that I do not wish to partake in, and I do not have any desire to test God by jumping off high places for no reason. Nope, I do not resonate with these. These are not my temptations. You want to know what my temptations are? These days, I have serious temptations to stop fighting, to just give up on the pandemic and stop trying to be safe and stop trying to create safe places. I want to do crazy things like bring my kid to worship or have dinner at a friend's house or get on a plane and meet one of my dear friend's new babies. I want to stop worrying. I want to make people happy. I want to encourage people. Sure, do whatever you want in worship. Take off your mask, stop distancing, sing. Don't worry about it. I want to give up. And this is really quite annoying, I am also tempted in exactly the opposite way. I live in a constant fear that every choice I make could result in my unvaccinated, unable to mask child getting COVID and living with long COVID for the rest of their life. And so I want to create a bubble and never leave it. I want to stay home, stop daycare, have groceries delivered, and function on Zoom until, I guess, forever. And actually, if I'm being honest, more than really being tempted by either extreme, I'm tempted by the idea of not having to decide anymore. Is this safe? Or is it safe enough? Is this worth it? If this results in my kid having long COVID in 20 years, well, I think this was the right choice. Do I need to do this because someone else's needs outrank my own or outrank my own needs related to my kid? Is this the right balance of courage and caution? I am so tired. It is so tempting to just move to one extreme or the other and stop deciding. It is tempting to move to one extreme or the other and have only one group of people frustrated with me and my decisions. So my temptation is to give up, to pick an extreme and live with the consequences, and at the very least not have to decide over and over and over again. And I know that this likely isn't even relevant to most of you anymore. Maybe you remember it, but those who are vaccinated and immunocompetent, those of you who don't live with people who are either unvaccinated or immunocompromised, probably are just feeling free right now. Numbers are down and reasonable people are ready to go on with life for good reasons. And for you, it might be that my temptations are sort of an unpleasant reminder of your past that you would rather forget. And I know that I am not alone. There are plenty of families with kids under 5 or immunocompromised people, or just people who work with kids or immunocompromised people who adjust their lives to protect them, or just people who adjust their lives to protect others. And people make these choices in the end because they think they are right. And of course, there are also people who have decided that the needs of connection or the life-giving work they do, or the risks they have assessed mean that letting go of fear and seeking out other people is the right choice for them. Guess what I'm saying is that I am tempted by simple answers, by choices I could make once and not have to go back to, by clarity and certainty. I don't need to be able to make the choices for everyone or have them be the same for everyone. But goodness gracious, I would like simple answers for me. And I would at this point settle for one simple answer if I could get it. Now, If you've been listening to me preach for some time, you could be scratching your head at how I, one of the people you know most comfortable thinking in shades of gray, could get to such a desire for certainty, for black or white answers. And the answer is actually very simple. The higher anxiety goes, the more humans search for certainty and wish to back it up at all costs. So what you're hearing is that I am a human impacted by anxiety, and just to put it out there, so are you. Welcome to the 2020s. Bruce Molina and Richard Rohrbaugh in Social Science Commentary on the Synoptic Gospels point out that what Jesus is actually being tested by in the desert is on his loyalty to God. Does he show faithfulness to God as kin? Does he show faithfulness to God as leader? Does he show faithfulness to God in understanding God's wishes? And the answers, of course, are yes. But I rather like that they refer to the question about commanding a stone to become bread as a test of kinship loyalty to God, and they put it this way. Note carefully how the devil frames the first challenge. If you are the Son of God, precisely that has been the claim, and precisely that is what is being tested. Note also how carefully Jesus answers when his lineage is questioned. He does not answer in his own words as if his honor derives from what he is in himself. To do that would be to grasp honor above that of his own father and turn honor into dishonor. So he answers as a loyal Middle Eastern son would always answer, with something from his family tradition. He offers the words of his true father in Deuteronomy, and by such laudable behavior he gains honor as virtue. A test of kinship loyalty to God. That resonates. Probably because all of the angles of what I'm tested by are variations on the theme of a test of kinship loyalty. What is my loyalty to my immediate family, my child and others who are vulnerable in it? How do I balance that with my loyalty to my church family, which includes people who are vulnerable in all sorts of ways, including in needs to be together and in needs to be at lower COVID risks? And how do I balance that with my kinship loyalty to God? And suddenly, with the framing at least, I can understand why I feel pulled in so many ways, and I am exhausted by the pressure of every decision. Because kinship loyalty itself pulls me in a multitude of directions, and each direction has its own set of reasons why it is good, and most of the time, each direction also has something pulling in exactly the opposite direction that also has reasons for being good and right, but at least I have a frame to make sense of it. And if I want to simplify things, I can admit to myself that for me, kinship loyalty to God is not actually distinct from kinship loyalty to those that I care for, with the possible exception that God would likely include me in my calculations, which I notably did not. So the long and short of it is that I feel this testing. I feel like I am wandering in the desert. I feel a yearning for clarity. But at least I know it all comes from love. And that gets me to the absolutely fabulous Deuteronomy reading. This is one of my favorites. Deuteronomy, you may remember, is set in the wilderness, but at the edge of it. The whole book presents itself as a series of speeches given to prepare the people before they enter the promised land, so that when they get there, they'll do it right. Spoiler alert, they don't. But anyway, one of the themes of Deuteronomy is that it is in the adversity and challenge of the wilderness, the desert, that the people learned to depend on God. And it's going to be more challenging to remember their dependence on God when things are going well. So as a person who is feeling like I'm wandering in the desert, I think I will respond, along with those who listen to the first time, yeah, that's a risk I'm willing to take. But the reading says that when they get there, when they enter the promised land and they grow things, there's going to be an abundance, which is what God wants for the people. And as they grow that abundance, as they settle into food security, as they're doing all of this, they are to remember the wanderings as they give thanks for the abundance. That is, they are to remember their story, to remember their scarcity, and to remember what it took to get there. And that's sort of interesting because I think in our culture, we tend to want to remember the glory days more than the days of struggle. We think about when we were strong and capable, not when we were, well, metaphorically struggling to find our way in the desert. But the idea of this commandment to tithe is to do so while recounting the struggles and then to give thanks for the abundance by noticing what it took to get there. And then taking of that abundance to share with those who don't have it, the landless priests and the Levites and the foreigners without land allotments. And this whole thing just gets me. The idea that we recognize our weak times, the idea that abundance is God's will for us, the culmination of the story, the reality that the first thing to do with abundance is to share it, the creation of a system whereby an abundance for some makes life possible for others, and within all of this, the coolness that this is where our tradition of offering comes from. The culmination of the story is abundance. The people are being taught how to distribute God's abundance fairly. They're standing on the edge of the promised land. The goal is to get there and live there and have it be just and good for everyone. And they do. They do it for centuries. For like 400 years, it was equitable, which means this is possible. And that in itself matters. For me, right now, in my place of feeling tested in the desert, there's hope in this story about abundance. And the reminder that abundance is God's long-term plan for me and us and all of us. It doesn't solve the present, but nothing does. But having some hope helps me get through. Abundance is God's plan for all of us. God takes the time to teach us how to be generous with our abundance. And kinship loyalty to everyone is how we get there. So I guess learning how to balance a multiplicity of needs within the kinship network is a useful skill. In any case, hear the words the people are instructed to say as they offer of their abundance. A wandering Aramean was my ancestor. He went down to Egypt and lived there as an alien, few in number, and there he became a great nation, mighty and populous. When the Egyptians treated us harshly and afflicted us by imposing hard labor on us, we cried to the Lord, the God of our ancestors. The Lord heard our voice and saw our affliction, our toil, and our oppression. The Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with a terrifying display of power, with signs and wonders, and God brought us into this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So now I bring the first fruit of the ground that you, O Lord, have given me. Maybe it sounds like this right now. I have emerged from a confused and lost people. In the midst of existent struggles with justice and equity came a pandemic that threatened everything and everyone in many ways. The challenges that might have united people overcame them and separated them. We became harsh to each other. I did not know what to do. I was never certain of anything. I cried to the Lord, as did everyone else, and God heard our voices and offered us rest. God guided us when we didn't know where to go. God gifted us when we couldn't figure out which way to turn. God was with us when we were numb. God did that and brought us to a new world and helped us form it into something better. So now I bring the first fruit of hope that you, O God, have given me. May the day come when we can say that as we bring forward our offerings. Amen.